Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to Breakfast with the Police. This is our second month, so it's good to get started again, to see you all. Morning, Judge. Good to see you, sir.
Morning.
So this morning, we're going to have a presentation by Sergeant Atchue. Been with the department for about 16 years. He's our senior sergeant. So Sergeant Atchue handles all of our defensive tactics and use of force for the department. Anytime there's a use of force incident, he has to review it, make sure it's within policy. He reviews the report, he reviews all the body camera videos to make sure that everything's being handled properly. Our use of force policy is really pretty strict. Any kind of force whatsoever pretty much has to generate a report by the officer, gets reviewed by the supervisor, and then it goes to Sergeant Atchue for review to make sure it's inside policy. Anything other than just a regular handcuffing, anytime there's any type of use of force, it gets reported. So thank you for coming today. Sergeant Atchue is going to do a demonstration about I believe our Vector Shield, a new safety device that we have. He wrote a grant recently that we were able to purchase these for our department. It's a great tool, and I'll just hand it over to him.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Can't tell if the microphone's actually on or not. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, my name's Chris Atchue. I've been with the department for a little over 16 years, as the chief said. I grew up here in town. Some of you might know the family name, might know my dad. He's up here a lot, helping out Bruce Atchue. And so we love being here in the community and being involved. So I thank the chief and you all for this opportunity this morning. So like the chief was saying, I'm going to do a presentation just briefly on a new piece of protective equipment and de-escalation equipment that we've recently acquired about a year ago through some federal grant money. And this product is called the Vector Protective Barrier. And if this is my partner here, Officer Turco. He can hold this up and to show you what it looks like. It's a very small product in terms of size, but this is a state-of-the-art level 3 National Institute of Justice rated ballistics protective barrier. It might look small in stature, but it's very rigid and it serves a very strategic purpose. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So in 2023, we wrote a grant through the Bureau of Justice Assistance, the Burn Memorial JAG grant for this program, and this outfitted all of our patrol vehicles, all our marked cruisers, with this shield. So every one of our cruisers, including our school resource officer, has one of these shields in the car. And the grant totaled $48,901. It's a very, very large sum of money. Each one of these shields costs approximately $3,500 per unit. And that comes with the shield, a tactical light that's affixed to the shield, harnessing system that can store inside of our cruisers. It's actually mounted right to the rear of the driver's seat of our police cars. So the officer, when he exits the police car, can just open the passenger door and grab this protective barrier and deploy it very rapidly and efficiently. So as I said, it's in all of our cruisers. This not only is a ballistic shield, but it's used for protection against any kind of blunt force trauma, any kind of edged weapons such as knives, axes, hatchets, baseball bats, even animal attacks. The company that's come in and trained us on this, Vector Protective Barriers, they even had a successful deployment that protected an officer, not in our department, but a different part of the country, from a dog attack. He was able to put a barrier in between himself and an animal that was attacking him and limit the amount of injury he sustained. So the whole purpose for this is not only to protect the officer, but also to protect the community, okay? And I'll explain a little bit what that entails. So In the recent police reform, the way in which police officers use force and how they go about using force, as the chief kind of touched on, has changed a little bit. You know, laws were written specifically to not force, but essentially make sure that police officers are using some form of de-escalation when feasible, when safe to do so, prior to using any kind of force, okay? And we go to a whole multitude of calls, a wide variety of calls in this town, anywhere from violent calls to calls that simply are a barking dog, like I just touched on with the animal attack, okay? And oftentimes we don't know how that call is going to play out, how that call is going to evolve, and what the end result of that call is going to be. There's some calls that when we go to them, we understand as police officers, based on the training, that there might be a little bit more to this call, might be a little bit more higher risk, but we might need to take a little bit extra time or an extra safety measure when we go out and try to process this call and investigate this call. And with this device being readily available in each one of our cruisers, we can now take this shield, affix it to your arm, very small in stature, right? Okay, and now the officer can go investigate this call, or whatever the case may be, and he has this readily available and deployed. He might not need to use it, but it's there and available. And when we talk about police reform and the use of force laws that govern how we can use force and when we should use force, right in the law, it explains that we must attempt to de-escalate. Now, what is de-escalation? Okay, we do it every day. It's talking to people, okay? It's trying to slow a situation down so that we can come up with some kind of alternative and some kind of safe resolution to a kind of a volatile situation, right? You might have a person that has a lot of emotional stuff going on, might have a mental health crisis, might have a social situation that has just driven them to the edge and they're just a little upset, right? We don't necessarily have to go use force in that situation, okay? We're not there just to arrest people, all right? We have a purpose. We offer resources, and we need to slow situations down sometimes and de-escalate, right? And so with the new police reform laws, right, that's what we do, and that's what we have to try to do, right? And one of those things with de-escalation is to slow the situation down, buy time, introduce alternative resources, right? And use barriers to protect ourselves and to essentially maintain a safe distance for both the member of the community and the officer, right? And so what is this right here that's placed between the officer and someone that they're speaking with, right? That's a barrier, right? A clearly defined safe zone, right? That the officer's saying, this is my space, this is your space, right? I'm gonna safely stay here behind this barrier, and we can talk this out, slow the situation down, and now the officer, whatever the situation may be, has some form of protection, right? That protects against any kind of surprise occurrences, right? He might be talking to me, he can see that I don't have any weapons, and all of a sudden, I might get upset with the officer because I don't want him here and I want to do what I want to do, and all of a sudden I reach out and I try to get at the officer, right? This is already here, it's present, it's a barrier, right? He doesn't have to necessarily immediately use force against me. He protected himself, right? He's maintained distance, and now he has the ability to come up with some other options or alternatives rather than just having to use force immediately, right? So the whole end game with this is to de-escalate, come up with another option on how we can safely resolve any kind of conflict situations in the street when we respond to calls by having this device here. And like I said, it's readily available to every officer on every call, all right, however that call may evolve, and also with our school resource officers, okay? Now, our school resource officer has one of these assigned strictly to him, right? He takes that with him in his patrol vehicle to the schools, whatever school he goes to, right? So if anything would have happened at the school, whether it be a intruder, whether it be an active shooter, whether it be a emotionally disturbed person in the school, on the school grounds, a fight in the schools, right? This is available as a means of de-escalation protection for both students, staff, and the school resource officer who's assigned to that, okay? some of the recent deployments we've had in the past year with this shield. We had an armed robbery suspect that fled, armed with a handgun, and this was deployed at the scene during negotiations. It allowed us a safe platform to negotiate with that suspect, to come to a safe resolution, and ultimately he did end up surrendering. It was a long duration event, but it offered us long extended protection, so we could go up and actually take the time and speak with someone rather than just forcing the hand and potentially having that situation that was very volatile, right, escalate quicker, right? We're taking the time, we're slowing things down. We had a high-risk entry into a hotel room in town for a kidnapping suspect. If this was deployed, it protect the officers as we made entry into the hotel room, right? Any threats that might be behind that door that we're unsure of, we don't know because that's a closed door. This was the first thing through, right? It protects us, it protects the people inside as well. And it was also used, as I said, it's very rigid, okay? It was also used to force entry into a building in a very urgent medical call. We actually had to use that to break down a door, right? And it didn't even leave a mark in this thing. And like I said, this thing's pretty rigid. As you can see, it has a very nice decorative cover if you hold it up, Officer Turco, right? Our police badge is right there on the front. These are all customized right to us. And these front covers here, okay, does anyone know, or anyone recognize that?
Sergeant.
It does resemble the sergeant stripes. However, that's not what I was looking for. Everyone see the back of a fire truck or an ambulance? Right? Big yellow stripes on them, right? Those are there for a reason, believe it or not, okay? You ever driving down the street on the highway and you see those things on the back of the ambulances? They're there to bring your attention to there, right? So these are there for a purpose. These are there, this is actually called a disorientation dazzle cover is what the company calls this. And it's to draw your attention to it, right? So if we introduce this into a situation, right, and he brings that up, and I'm here and I'm upset and I'm angry, my eyes are drawn to there. For that brief moment, it took my brain off of being angry, the aggression towards an officer, and it brought it to there, right? It's a clearly defined stop. Hey, I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna break your train of thought, okay? And I'm gonna disorient you just for a quick second. Just so maybe my words, my time I'm taking might click and we might be able to de-escalate the situation, right? So everything with this is designed for a purpose, and the end goal is safety, right? That's what we do as police, that's what we do in this community. We want to make sure our community is safe and our police officers are safe, and this is just another tool that gives us the ability to do that much better. And with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
Quick question, how many calls are mental health related, and do you have a mental health professional on duty with police?
Great question. For an exact number of mental health calls, I can't tell you the exact number, but what I can tell you is a lot of them, okay? Our call volume related to mental health has increased exponentially, I'd say, the past 3 to 5 years. And we as police are introducing additional training on how to process those calls, because we're police, right? We're not doctors, we're not mental health professionals, but we've come to understand that we need to be multifaceted, we need to be well-versed in all these problems that we're getting dispatched to. And using additional resources, much like clinicians on staff, has been a great assistance to us. And we do have a program with a mental health clinician that is on staff with us. It's not full-time, that's through the advocates. Again, that was also funded through grant funding.
Yes.
And one day a week right now, Chief?
Yeah, it's only part-time right now. We do have a full-time grant, but the advocates aren't able to fully staff the program. So we're waiting to get our full-time clinician back. We're actually the first department in central Massachusetts to get a full-time clinician on our staff. So we look forward to getting our position back to full-time.
Yeah. And when that clinician was on staff full-time with us, he or she would be in the police car with an officer, responding to calls. If they were working on follow-ups with calls from prior shifts, they would be in the station, and if we needed them for a call, we would send an officer to the station, pick them up, and bring them right to the scene. And again, it's an additional resource. There's nothing that we can do for an end-all, be-all, cure-all for any call we go on, right? But if we have the ability to introduce additional resources to possibly come up with a safe and more efficient resolution to a problem, we're more than happy to entertain that, and we welcome that, and the ability to handle those calls so everyone ends up safe. And that's again, the end goal is safety. Yes, sir.
Do you use this shield every time you get out of the car?
No, we don't use it every time. It's the wearer policy is written on that, is the officers have their discretion on when they can deploy it. It's primarily focused on those calls that are a little bit higher risk. So when officers go on a call, like for an alarm at 2 in the morning at a business, and all of a sudden they go around the back of the business and there's an open door, okay? Well, it's not just an alarm with locked doors, right? Now there's an open door, right? So now it's a little bit more dangerous, right? So now we need to go into that building, make sure no one's in there, right? Now, why would I go into the building just as I am? I have a vest on, right? But if I can have that with me, that's that much more protection for me, right? And potentially for whoever's inside, right? It's introducing another safety tool, right, that we didn't have before. It's just one extra level of protection for everyone involved with that particular call. And so to answer your question, not every time. That's up to the officer. Yes, sir.
I was surprised how heavy that was.
Very heavy, right? So as I mentioned,
Well, that's not the small caliber bullet?
so like I said, this is a level 3 National Institute of Justice rated shield, right? So this will stop everything up to a .223 round, a rifle round essentially, fired out of like our patrol rifles, which kind of, for those of you that are familiar with firearms, pretty good size weapon to stop, right? And this has been tested and rated for that level with multiple strikes. Again, and so this, you might look at this and say it's very small, right? So if the officer holds this, the whole design for this is to protect the officer's hydraulics, right? And so what I mean by that is the main line, right? What's important on our body, our head, our neck, and right here, right? If I get hit with something on the arm, it might hurt, it might cause damage, but I'll be able to work through it. If I get hit with something here, that's going to be incapacitating, right? And that's what this is designed to protect, right? It's not an end-all, be-all, or cure-all, right? But this is to give us a chance. This is to give us a little bit extra protection, right? And when the officer has that, he's protecting his head, his torso, his heart, all those vital areas, right? If I get him in the shoulder, that's one thing, okay? But this is protecting his main line, right? That's what we want to make sure is safe. That keeps us able to function, that keeps us able to perform our duties, and again, it's about safety. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Given the weight, how many extra hours of exercise?
It is very heavy. Again, however small it is, it's heavy, and it's designed that way for a reason. The materials that are used, and it is a good workout. So the more we deploy it, the more physically fit we'll get. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
They couldn't have made that out of Kevlar or something, huh?
You know what? I don't know what the mixture is and what they use for the actual shield product. But whatever it is, it's the latest and greatest. You see those big shields that cover an entire body. Those are about 100 and something pounds. So this is lightweight in terms of a shield product. So we welcome it with open arms to have this and not be able to have to lug one of those massive shields out. This is readily available, transportable, and quickly deployed. Any other questions? Yes?
If the school resource officer has it in his car
Yep.
during an event, is he gonna have time to go get it?
Yeah, so good question. So he has it with him, right? He goes from school to school. He's not just in one school all day long. So he has it in his car, and he has the ability to take that into the school with him. He has an office at the high school. He has the ability to have that in his office. He has the ability to take that from, let's say, the high school. If he has a meeting over at Hastings School, he can go over to Hastings School, take it out of his car, bring it in. Now, I'm not saying he carries that thing around with him throughout everywhere he goes to the school, but he has the ability, it's very mobile, like we talked about. He has the ability to introduce that to every school, wherever he goes. And again, it's about response time and quick deployment and things like that, and what you touch on is a good point. Sometimes we can't have every option available to us, so we make do with what we have. But if the ability to deploy that is there, it's again one extra resource that we have that might protect that officer, so he can stop any kind of potential threat. It might protect a student, it might protect a staff member. Just give them enough time to make either a phone call or whatever the case may be. Again, it's one more thing that helps us do our job.
Have you introduced it to the kids?
So
They would love it.
it hasn't been formally introduced to all the schools. When we have tours often that come through our department, we'll have a cruiser in our Sally Port, our garage. We'll have these. I'll bring these out. I'll show the kids those. Obviously, kids, are visual learners a lot of times. They like the front cover of those things because it's got the police badge on it and the dazzle cover. And they're surprised too with the structural integrity of that and how heavy that is. So yes, they have seen that. Not all of them. I don't necessarily think it's going to be like a lesson plan at the schools, but they have seen it. It's out in our community. Things like this, when we introduce it to you, so you don't see us on the side of the road and you're like, what is that new thing? That's crazy. What do they have there? So that's what it is. And again, if there's any further questions or you tell family and friends about it, if they want to stop down to the police station, we'd be more than happy to show it to them. There's another question?
Well, part of my comment about the kids is they would go home and tell their parents about it and get more support from the community if they knew you were doing this extra thing in the schools and we have this extra thing to protect everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's something we could definitely explore. Maybe use social media or something to get that out there a little bit more visually so people could see that, recognize that, and understand exactly what it is. That's a great point. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I always wonder when I see an event with a police cruiser, usually there's 2 or 3 cruisers, it's never one. There's always one at the scene and another couple come up. And so the more officers at the scene, the more spread out the department is good. And there might not be enough officers to be sure if another event comes up. Would this device make you feel more confident in not having to send as many officers to
So that's a good question. And so to answer the first part about that question, so we respond to calls with multiple officers, and that's for several reasons, right? It's for safety, number one. Number two, 4 eyes are better than 2. There's a lot of things that happen on scene that if I'm engaged with a person, talking to a person, I might not be able to focus my attention to someone else that might pose a threat, that might need investigation. If there's a call that's involving 2 or 3 people and I only send 1 officer, but it's going to take that 1 officer a lot more time to talk to each person, identify each person, investigate what the problem is. So we send multiple officers to calls for a variety of reasons. Having this protective barrier on the call won't necessarily eliminate the amount of officers we need. That's more geared towards the shift supervisor to maintain that. As a shift supervisor, if I go to a call and I have 3 of my officers there and I check in on them and it's nothing that needs 3 officers there, we'll have those officers clear from that call and become available. There's certainly high-risk calls or calls that take a long duration of time that need a lot of officers there. Give you an example, it's close to home for all of us, right? There's a truck under that bridge, right? That's going to take a few officers and it's going to be a long event, right? So we need to be able to rehab our officers, get them in and out, give them breaks, especially if it's in the middle of July, 90 degrees outside with directed traffic for 2 hours. cutting the trailer out from under a bridge. That's gonna take some time, so we're gonna need some officers. But if I just have some debris in the road, I don't need 4 officers there, right? One officer's there waiting for the DPW to come down and clean it up, would be more than efficient. For a situation with this shield, if we're deploying the shield, it's gonna be a call that needs multiple officers, okay? Just inherently by the nature of the call, right? That shield's gonna be deployed at a higher risk call, right? Therefore, we're gonna need more officers there. Now, what that number is, that's dependent on the call, and that's up to the officers and the shift supervisors to determine that. However, the more officers we have, the safer we are, the more likely that incident comes to a safe resolution. And we have the ability to utilize our partners around us, other towns for mutual aid. If we do have a deficiency in staffing, we're fortunate here. We have a great town that supported us, and we've been able to staff our department adequately. We generally have the appropriate amount of officers to respond to calls. And don't get me wrong, just last night I had to use another town for mutual aid because we didn't have the ability to respond to the amount of calls with the amount of officers we had on. We were just that busy. There are those circumstances, but generally speaking, we do have that ability, and that goes back to the support of the town. Yes, sir.
If there was 3 of you engaging with one person that was having some kind of meltdown,
Yep.
would all 3 wear this, or do you have a protocol that says just the point man does, or?
No, it is, and again, that goes back to the officers. It's up to their discretion. So you might have a situation where one officer has it. You might have a situation with no officers have it, because it was that immediate of a situation that the officers just had to get there and get out of their cars and address the situation. They might not be able to deploy it. Then there might be a situation where we know we're walking into a situation where there's a higher risk. We've had time to plan. We've assigned several officers at point to have those deployed, and we purposefully have several of them deployed for a reason. So it's all situational dependent, and these calls we go on are very fluid, and they develop rapidly sometimes. So again, it goes back to, it's not an end-all, cure-all, be-all, but it's another tool that we can use in certain circumstances. Yes, sir.
Last question, I hope. The cost, and
Yes.
how many of them do you have?
There's one for each patrol vehicle, including this school resource officer. So it was a total of 15 of those that we've purchased. And they're all deployed, and they're left-right specific. And we have a unique situation where we have an influx of lefties on our department. And so we have several of them that are lefties, and we have designated patrol vehicles that have a lefty shield in them. So we assign our lefty officers to them, and that's all relative to the tools that we have available to us on our belt, right? So if I'm a righty and I have to get one of my tools and I have a shield in my right hand, that might become a problem, right? So these are designed to be specific to the hand. So if I'm wearing that shield on my left hand, I'm able to take my hand in and out of that shield. If you want to show them that. So he can rotate his hand out of the shield and still use that hand. He can still grab stuff with that hand, even though that shield's up there. And now if he was holding the incorrect shield, right, if he was holding a lefty shield, he wouldn't be able to take his hand out of that handle because of the way it's designed. So we have 15 of these. They're all installed in the cars. They're out on the street right now and readily available for our officers. And again, I welcome anyone from the community. If they have more interest in these, if they'd like to stop by, I'd be more than happy to take some time, show them to them, explain them to them. And I thank you for your time this morning. Yes,
How much are they?
I just want to know how much weight because you're adding a piece.
Yep.
How much weight are you actually putting on a body?
There's quite a bit. And again, without getting into the whole biomechanics of it, we've made tremendous strides and also wellness over the years in health and safety, in taking some of that weight and taking it off of our hips, putting it up on these vests, right? You see these vests on us?
Yeah.
A couple of years back, the chief was very generous enough to explore and entertain the use of these load-bearing vests, right? It takes that weight off of our hips and back, puts it on our shoulders, and it promotes officer wellness and duration, so we can we can invest in our employees and our officers, right? So there is a lot of weight, but we're improving the way we do things, right? And so you do, if you introduce that thing probably weighs 10 pounds or so. You introduce that to all the gear I have on, you're probably looking at 30 pounds a year. So it does add up, but we're making improvements on the way things are being done nowadays, and it's all geared towards officer wellness, community involvement, things like that. So we're fortunate to have a chief that's willing to explore those opportunities in a town that supports us. If we supplement the support with grant writing and procurement, like things like this. This is a project that probably wouldn't have been able to get funded, at least not for quite some time, if it wasn't for the grant writing aspect of things. And again, so to answer your question, ma'am, so the whole project was approximately $50,000, $48,900 more, and each one of these units is about $3,500 a piece. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Oh, I'm sorry, one more question over there.
So is it
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, it was all done through grant funding. The grant, everything's been closed out with the grant. It was awarded in fiscal year '23, and like I said, it was through the Bureau of Justice Assistance Burn Jag Memorial Grant is the program that funded this.
Go get it.
Okay. I thank you all for your time. Enjoy the rest of your breakfast, and stay safe.